Right after my husband divorced me, he called my mother and said, "Come pick up your useless daughter. I do not want her anymore." 1 minute later, my mom arrived with a convoy of luxury cars, and my ex was left speechless. My name is Zara. I am 32 years old, and for 5 years I played the role of a struggling freelance consultant just to protect my husband's fragile ego. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever hidden your true light to make an insecure man feel taller. The thick stack of divorce papers hit my glass coffee table with a heavy, echoing thud. Marcus, my husband of 5 years, stood over me with a smug, satisfied grin. Wrapped tightly around his arm was Vanessa, the 26-year-old director of marketing at his fintech startup. She wore a tight red dress that left little to the imagination and carried a pristine Hermes bag she definitely could not afford on her marketing salary. Sign them Zara. Marcus adjusted the perfectly pressed cuffs of his tailored Italian suit. I am done carrying dead weight. My company is about to secure a massive round of Series B funding, and I need a partner who actually reflects my success. I need someone ambitious, not a woman who spends her days doing low-paying freelance data entry gigs in her pajamas. Vanessa smirked, twisting a lock of blonde hair around her manicured finger. It is nothing personal, Zara. Marcus just needs a woman who understands the elite corporate world. Someone who can stand beside him at high society galas and impress the right people. You have always been such a liability, dragging him down with your complete lack of ambition and your lower-class background. I sat perfectly still on the velvet sofa, calmly sipping my warm green tea. I did not cry. I did not scream or throw things. I just looked at the arrogant man whose entire career and fragile status were secretly built entirely upon my anonymous financial investments. Marcus pulled out his phone from his breast pocket. He typed furiously, a cruel and vindictive smile spreading across his face. You know what he said, his voice dripping with absolute condescension. Let me do you a huge favor right now. I am going to call that absentee mother of yours. You have kept your family hidden away in the Chicago projects for 5 years out of shame, but it is finally time she takes her heavy burden back. He hit the speaker button and tossed the phone onto the coffee table right next to the glaring divorce papers. The phone rang twice before a crisp, commanding, and undeniably authoritative voice answered. Speak. Marcus leaned over the table, puffing out his chest, mocking and thoroughly arrogant. Listen carefully, old woman. Come pick up your useless daughter. I do not want her anymore. She contributes absolutely nothing to my career, my life, or my future, and I am moving on to a woman of actual high class. You have exactly 1 hour to get her trash out of my house before I throw all her cheap belongings onto the front lawn for the garbage collectors. There was a heavy loaded pause on the other end of the line. A sharp, chilling laugh echoed through the tiny phone speaker, filling the room with an icy dread. You are exceptionally lucky I was already in the neighborhood, Marcus. You have exactly 60 seconds to step outside and face me. The line went completely dead. Marcus laughed out loud, wrapping his arm even tighter around Vanessa's waist. What is she going to do? Take the city bus down here and hit me with her purse? Vanessa giggled loudly. Maybe she will bring a stolen shopping cart to pack up all your cheap clothes, Zara. But the laughter died in their throats instantly, as a low, synchronized, and terrifying rumble shook the floorboards of our living room. It sounded like a localized earthquake rolling straight toward us. The expensive crystal glasses on my bar cart vibrated violently against each other. Marcus frowned deeply and walked over to the large front window, pulling back the heavy linen drapes to look outside. The color instantly and completely drained from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. He stumbled backward, dropping his phone onto the hardwood floor with a sharp crack. I casually stood up, smoothing my skirt, and walked to the window to admire the spectacular view. Pulling into the wide circular driveway of the house Marcus blindly claimed was his, was not a rusty city bus or a beat-up old sedan. It was an intimidating fleet of 6 heavily armored black Cadillac Escalades moving in perfect, flawless unison. They blocked the entire driveway and the street beyond, their heavily tinted windows reflecting the bright afternoon sun. The heavy doors of the lead and trailing vehicles opened simultaneously. 12 massive men wearing dark tailored suits and communication earpieces, stepped out onto the pavement. They moved with strict military precision, immediately securing the perimeter of the property and standing at rigid, intimidating attention. "What is going on?" Vanessa shrieked, clutching Marcus's arm in sudden, genuine panic. "Who are those dangerous-looking people outside our house?" Marcus could not speak. His mouth opened and closed repeatedly, but no sound came out. He was staring blindly at the center vehicle, his breathing becoming shallow and incredibly rapid as his eyes widened in sheer disbelief. The driver of the central Escalade stepped out and swiftly opened the rear passenger door. A pair of blood-red stiletto heels touched the pavement. Then Vivian Sterling stepped out into the bright daylight. My mother wore a flawless custom Chanel power suit, her posture rigid, regal, and utterly terrifying. She slowly removed her oversized designer sunglasses, revealing cold, calculating eyes that had mercilessly destroyed corporate titans across the globe. She looked at the suburban house with utter and complete disgust, as if she had just stepped in something incredibly foul on the sidewalk. Marcus gasped aloud, his hands trembling violently at his sides. "That is Vivian Sterling," he whispered, his voice cracking with pure, unadulterated terror. "That is the legendary billionaire founder of Sterling Venture Capital. I have been begging her executive assistant for a simple 5-minute pitch meeting for 6 long months. My company will go entirely bankrupt by this Friday if she does not invest her capital. Why in the world is she standing outside my house?" I picked up my warm teacup, taking one final slow sip before setting it down gently, right on top of his precious divorce papers. "She is not here for a pitch meeting, Marcus." I smoothed the front of my blue dress and walked confidently past his trembling figure toward the front door. "She is here to pick up her useless daughter." The heavy oak door swings wide open before I even reach the handle. Vivian Sterling strides into my living room like she owns the very oxygen we are breathing. 4 massive men in tailored suits fan out behind her, instantly securing the perimeter with absolute military precision. They block all the exits, their hands folded neatly in front of them, their eyes scanning the space for any potential threats. Marcus scrambles backward, completely abandoning his confident posture and nearly tripping over the edge of the expensive Persian rug he made me pay for. He frantically tries to straighten his silk tie, attempting to summon that fake, charismatic CEO persona he uses to charm gullible investors and manipulate board members. He clears his throat, forcing a nervous, desperate smile onto his face. He opens his mouth, probably to offer some slick, pathetic excuse or to try and network his way out of this nightmare. He never gets the chance. My mother does not say a single word of greeting. She simply steps forward, raises her manicured hand, and delivers a resounding crack across his face. The sound echoes off the vaulted ceiling, sharp as a whip snapping in the dead quiet room. Marcus stumbles hard, crashing into the side of an armchair and clutching his rapidly reddening cheek in absolute shock. He looks up at her, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and utter confusion, unable to comprehend that the titan of industry he worships just physically struck him in his own home. My mother towers over him, her presence filling the room with an icy, lethal authority. "You think I did not attend your wedding because I was poor," she demands. Her voice is deceptively quiet, but it carries a heavy, crushing weight that commands total submission. "You honestly believed I was some uneducated woman rotting away in a Chicago housing project because that is the ignorant narrative that made you feel superior. I did not attend your wedding, Marcus, because my daughter was willing to renounce her billion-dollar trust fund just to coddle the fragile ego of a pathetic, mediocre man." She steps closer, forcing him to cower further against the chair upholstery. "I stayed away because Zara begged me to give you a chance to prove you were worth her sacrifice. Clearly, she made a terrible investment, and I do not tolerate bad investments in my portfolio or my family." Marcus looks back and forth between us, his brain desperately trying to process the reality shattering in front of him. He looks at me standing there in my simple blue dress, and then at the billionaire standing fiercely protective in front of me. The realization hits him like a speeding freight train. The useless freelance consultant he just discarded is the sole heir to the very empire he has been begging to save his sinking company. Vanessa is frozen stiff on the sofa. She is clutching her bright orange Hermes Birkin bag against her chest like a protective shield. her eyes darting nervously toward the large security guards blocking the door. I calmly step forward, walking right past my mother, and head straight for the kitchen island. I slide open the top drawer and pull out a heavy pair of stainless steel shears. The metal gleams sharply under the pendant lights as I test the tension of the blades. I walk back into the living room, the heels of my shoes clicking steadily against the hardwood floor, stopping right in front of my husband's trembling mistress. I point the shears directly at the orange leather resting in her lap. "That is a truly beautiful Birkin, Vanessa," I say, keeping my tone light and conversational. "Retail value is around $25,000 if you have the connections to buy it directly from the boutique. But we both know you did not buy it on a marketing director's salary. Marcus bought it for you last Tuesday at exactly 3 in the afternoon." Vanessa pulls the bag tighter against her chest, looking at Marcus for help, but he is entirely paralyzed. "You swiped your exclusive metal black card." Marcus, I continue, turning my attention back to my ex-husband. "The one you love throwing down at expensive steakhouses to impress your Silicon Valley friends. The one you constantly claim is a perk of your brilliant startup success." Marcus swallows hard, a large bead of sweat dripping down his temple. "I earned that card," he stammers, his voice shaking so badly he sounds like a frightened child caught in a lie. "It is my corporate account based on my own credit and my own achievements." I laugh, a genuine bright sound that makes him flinch violently. "You are the CEO of a fintech company, Marcus. You should really learn to read the fine print on your financial statements before making arrogant claims. That black card is nothing but a secondary authorized user card. It is tied directly to a private wealth management account at Sterling Venture Capital, my personal account." I hold out my hand, palm facing up, demanding absolute compliance. "Hand it over right now." Marcus hesitates, his ridiculous pride battling his overwhelming terror. One of my mother's security guards simply takes a single step forward, cracking his knuckles loudly. Marcus fumbles frantically in his tailored pockets, practically tearing the expensive fabric to pull out his designer wallet. With trembling fingers, he extracts the heavy black metal card and drops it into my waiting palm, as if it physically burns him. I place the card carefully between the sharp blades of the stainless steel shears and squeeze with all my strength. The metal snaps in two with a sharp, satisfying crunch. The broken pieces fall to the floor, landing right on top of his precious divorce papers. "Your account is permanently frozen, Marcus," I state coldly, staring down at him. "And by the way, you are trespassing." Just as Marcus opens his mouth to argue, the heavy oak front door swings open again. Liam and his white wife, Chloe, burst into the foyer carrying a massive bottle of champagne and silver balloons. They are completely oblivious to the thick tension in the room, the broken credit card on the floor, and the 4 massive security guards standing like stone statues. Chloe marches straight past my mother without even glancing at her perfectly tailored suit. She zeroes in on me immediately, her face twisted into that familiar condescending smirk I have endured for the past 5 years at every family Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. "Pop the cork, Liam," she commands, her shrill voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. We are finally celebrating Marcus dumping the dead weight. It is about time this house got cleared of the trash. She looks me up and down with absolute disgust, making a dramatic show of dusting off her expensive cashmere cardigan. "Pack your cheap bags, Zara. Marcus worked incredibly hard to buy this gorgeous estate, and it is high time you leave it to people with actual class. Maybe you can find a tiny apartment back in whatever rough neighborhood you crawled out of. We all know your little freelance data entry gigs could never afford a place in this zip code." Liam steps out from behind her, shaking his head and laughing along with his wife. He points a finger at me, looking just as arrogant as his brother. "Chloe is right, Zara. Marcus has carried you financially for half a decade. You should be thanking him for letting you live in his luxury home instead of standing there looking like you own the place. Start packing your things before we throw them out into the street ourselves." Marcus finally finds his voice, but it is a weak, desperate croak. "Liam, shut up," he whispers, his eyes darting frantically toward my mother. "Chloe, please just stop talking right now." But Chloe never stops talking when she thinks she has the upper hand. She steps closer to me, her smirk widening into a nasty grin. "Why should we stop Marcus? She has been leeching off your success since day one. I told you from the beginning that she was not our kind of people. She does not know how to dress, she does not know how to network, and she certainly does not belong in a multi-million-dollar property. She belongs in the background. I do not yell. I do not cry. I do not even flinch at her thinly veiled racist insults. Instead, I look at Vivienne. My mother gives me a single sharp nod of approval. I raise my right hand and snap my fingers once. The head of my mother's security detail steps forward instantly. He reaches inside his tailored suit jacket and pulls out a thick black legal binder. He hands it to me with a respectful bow of his head. The heavy thud of the binder opening breaks the silence in the room. I pull out a crisp official document stamped with the state seal and drop it directly onto the shattered pieces of Marcus's black card and the unsigned divorce papers. You are absolutely right about one thing, Chloe, I say, keeping my voice dangerously calm and level. This is a multi-million-dollar property, but you are completely wrong about who holds the deed. Chloe scoffs, crossing her arm over her chest. What is that supposed to be? Some fake lease agreement you printed off the internet. It is the property deed, I state clearly. Read it carefully. Liam leans over the coffee table, his brow furrowing as he scans the legal text. He reads the name of the owning entity aloud. Sterling Holdings Anonymous, LLC. He looks up confused. What does this mean, Marcus? I thought you bought this place when your startup got its first seed funding. Marcus looks like he is going to vomit right on the Persian rug. He backs away from the table, shaking his head in sheer panic. Let me translate it for you, Liam, I say, stepping around the coffee table to stand directly in front of them. Marcus never bought this house. 5 years ago, when his credit was garbage and his startup was failing, I purchased this estate through an anonymous holding company. I let him pretend he bought it because his fragile masculine pride could not handle the fact that his wife was wealthy. I paid the mortgage. I paid the property taxes. I paid for the very roof over your heads every single time you came over here to drink my wine and insult my background. Marcus has been living completely rent-free in my property for half a decade. Chloe's mouth falls open. She looks at Marcus, expecting him to deny it, to yell at me, to call me a liar. But Marcus just covers his face with his trembling hands. Vanessa lets out a small whimper, shrinking back against the sofa cushions as the reality of her situation finally sinks in. The rich, successful CEO she thought she was stealing is actually a broke fraud living in his wife's house. You are lying! Chloe snaps, her voice pitching higher in sudden desperation. This is a trick. You do not have that kind of money. You are just a freelancer. I am Zara Sterling. I correct her, my tone dropping to a freezing whisper. Sole heir to the Sterling venture capital empire. And I am entirely out of patience for squatters in my home. I turn to the towering security guards waiting by the doors. Gentlemen, remove these squatters from my property immediately. Do not let them pack a single bag. The guards move with terrifying speed. One grabs Marcus by the back of his expensive suit jacket, lifting him effortlessly. Another secures Liam, while a third directs a screaming Vanessa toward the door. Chloe tries to slap a guard away, but he simply steps aside and firmly guides her by the shoulders toward the exit. She thrashes and shrieks, kicking her designer heels against the floorboards, but her protests are entirely useless against trained professionals. You cannot do this, Chloe screams as she is shoved out the front door. We are family. You stopped being family the moment you told me I did not belong here, I call out after her. They are physically marched down the driveway and dumped unceremoniously onto the hard concrete curb right next to the street. The heavy front door slams shut behind them, echoing with finality. I do not stay in the living room. I walk upstairs to the master bedroom and step out onto the wrought iron balcony that overlooks the front yard. I pour myself a glass of expensive red wine from the bedroom minibar and look down at the pathetic scene unfolding on the sidewalk. Down below, Marcus is scrambling to his feet, brushing dirt off his ruined suit. Chloe is yelling at Liam while Vanessa is crying hysterically about her destroyed Hermes bag. Suddenly, Marcus's phone begins to ring loudly from his pocket. He answers it, his hand shaking uncontrollably. Marcus, it is David. His chief financial officer yells through the receiver, loud enough for me to hear from the balcony. You need to get to the office right now. Our primary angel investor just called. They found out about the impending divorce and the lack of secure assets. They just pulled all their funding. Every single dime is gone, Marcus. We cannot cover payroll. We are going bankrupt in exactly 48 hours. The phone slips from Marcus's fingers and shatters on the pavement. He falls to his knees on the concrete, his entire fabricated world completely collapsing around him. He slowly lifts his head, looking up toward the house he falsely claimed as his own. I stand on the balcony, the evening wind catching the fabric of my dress. I look down at the man who called my mother to pick up her useless daughter. I raise my crystal glass of red wine, offering him a slow, mocking toast before taking a long, satisfying sip. The taste of that red wine on my balcony was sweet, but watching Marcus scramble over the next 48 hours is even sweeter. Desperation is a powerful motivator for a narcissist losing his grip on power. Facing total bankruptcy, he secures a last-minute dinner reservation at Maison de Lumière, the most exclusive French restaurant in Atlanta. He brings Vanessa along, dressing her up in rented couture to project an image of stability and extreme wealth. I is attempting to woo a major venture capitalist, a man named Richard Caldwell, who has the capital to save his sinking fintech startup. My mother and I have our own dinner plans at the exact same establishment. We arrive at 8 o'clock, stepping out of the Escalade into the warm Atlanta evening air. I am wearing a custom emerald silk gown that moves like liquid, while my mother is draped in an immaculate white Tom Ford suit. The maitre d' greets us, immediately bowing his head in deep respect. As he leads us through the dimly lit, opulent dining room, the crystal chandeliers casting golden glows over the velvet booths, I spot them. Marcus is sweating profusely, leaning across a table trying to hand Caldwell a glossy portfolio. Vanessa sits beside him, looking entirely out of place while aggressively swirling a glass of expensive Bordeaux. But they are not the only familiar faces. Sitting just 2 tables away are Liam and Chloe. They must be celebrating with whatever remaining credit limit Liam has left on his maxed-out cards. Chloe spots me instantly. Her eyes widen in shock before her face contorts into an ugly mask of pure, unadulterated entitlement. She drops her silver fork onto her porcelain plate with a loud, sharp clatter that turns the heads of several wealthy patrons. She stands up violently, her chair scraping harshly against the polished hardwood floor. "Excuse me," she yells, waving her hand aggressively at the maitre d'. "What is the meaning of this? This is a Michelin-starred establishment, not a public soup kitchen. Why are you letting ghetto freelancers walk into the main dining room? They are completely ruining the ambiance and making me sick to my stomach." My mother pauses, her posture perfectly straight. She does not look angry. She looks highly amused. Chloe marches right up to the maitre d', pointing a manicured finger directly at my face. "I know this woman," she sneers, her voice carrying across the hushed restaurant. "She is a broke data entry clerk who just got kicked out of her husband's house. She and her mother do not belong around people of our caliber. Have security throw them out right now before I call the health department." Liam stands up, quickly grabbing Chloe by the elbow, trying to pull her back, but the damage is already done. Marcus hears the loud commotion and turns around. The blood completely drains from his face when he sees my mother standing there. He drops his pitch portfolio right into his plate of roasted duck sauce, splashing everywhere. My mother does not raise her voice. She does not argue with a woman who clearly possesses zero actual class or financial standing. She simply reaches into her pristine leather clutch and pulls out her heavy metal Centurion card, along with a sleek platinum checkbook. She looks directly at the restaurant general manager, who has just rushed over to apologize for the unseemly disturbance. "Tell me," she says, her voice echoing with lethal authority, "what is the exact cost of a full restaurant buyout for the entire evening, including your projected tips and the inconvenience fee for clearing the floor immediately?" The manager blinks, calculating rapidly. "Perhaps $70,000, madam." My mother writes a check for $100,000 and hands it to him alongside her black card to keep an open tab for the kitchen. "This establishment is now closed for a private family event," she announces coldly. "Clear the room." The manager bows deeply, turning immediately to Chloe and Liam. "I am terribly sorry, but you must vacate the premises immediately. Your current bill is complimentary." Chloe turns bright red with sheer humiliation, screaming that she will sue the restaurant for discrimination, while Liam physically drags her toward the exit doors. The manager then walks over to Marcus and Vanessa. Please gather your belongings and leave. The restaurant is now completely private. Marcus panics. He grabs Caldwell by the arm, begging him to step outside to finish the vital pitch. Please, Mr. Caldwell, Marcus pleads, sweating straight through his expensive Italian suit. Give me 5 minutes. My software algorithm will double your investment. Just listen to me. Caldwell firmly detaches his arm from Marcus. He smooths his tailored jacket and steps away from the table, leaving Marcus and Vanessa standing there in absolute disgrace. Caldwell does not head for the exit. Instead, he walks purposefully across the dining room floor, stopping directly in front of me. He ignores Marcus' frantic, desperate pleas, echoing behind him. Caldwell buttons his jacket and bows respectfully at the waist. Ms. Sterling, he says, his voice filled with profound admiration. It is an absolute honor to finally meet you in person. The acquisition strategy you drafted for our global expansion last quarter was nothing short of brilliant. You saved us $50 million in tax liabilities alone, and we owe you. Marcus stops breathing entirely. His hands fall to his sides as he stares at me, his eyes bulging with a sickening realization. He remembers the long nights I sat quietly on our couch, typing away on my cheap laptop while he belittled my freelance data entry gigs. He remembers loudly bragging at dinner parties about a phantom mastermind consultant in the financial district whom he idolized and wanted to hire for his own board. He realizes in absolute terror that the brilliant, invisible corporate strategist he worships and the useless ex-wife he discarded are the exact same woman. Marcus stands frozen in the center of the opulent dining room, his mouth hanging slightly open as his brain short-circuits. The man he desperately needs to save his sinking company just bowed to me. Richard Caldwell completely ignores my ex-husband standing right next to him. Caldwell keeps his eyes fixed respectfully on me, waiting for my response. I offer Caldwell a polite nod, acknowledging his praise for the acquisition strategy I built. Marcus tries to speak, but his vocal cords refuse to cooperate. He looks at my emerald silk gown, and then back at Caldwell. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. The brilliant, invisible corporate strategist he worships and the useless ex-wife he just discarded are the exact same woman. The restaurant manager clears his throat, breaking the awkward silence. He gestures sharply to the security staff standing by the velvet ropes. Please escort these individuals out immediately, the manager commands, pointing directly at Marcus, Vanessa, Liam, and Chloe. The absolute humiliation of the golden boy and his entitled sister-in-law being herded like common trespassers out of an elite French restaurant is a beautiful sight. The guards step forward, placing firm hands on Liam and Marcus, guiding them aggressively toward the heavy glass exit doors. Vanessa covers her face with her hands, weeping softly as other wealthy patrons watch the pathetic spectacle. But Chloe refuses to leave quietly. She has always wielded her privilege like a weapon against me. Ever since Liam brought her to the first family barbecue, she made sure to remind me of my place. She complained about the seasoning of my food, mocked my natural hair, and whispered loudly to Marcus that I was an anchor dragging down his potential. She always played the role of the superior, pristine white woman who elevated the family status simply by marrying into it. Now she is being publicly humiliated by a black woman she spent 5 years calling a ghetto freelancer, and her fragile superiority complex simply cannot handle the catastrophic collapse. Chloe violently yanks her arm away from the security guard. She spins around, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unhinged rage. Her designer heels click rapidly and dangerously against the polished marble floor as she charges directly at me. She raises her hands, aiming a vicious shove right at my chest, screaming that I rigged this entire night to ruin her life. She expects me to cower. She expects me to engage in a loud physical fight that will validate her racist stereotypes about me being aggressive. I do not flinch. I do not raise my voice, and I certainly do not raise my hands. I simply pivot sharply on my heels, stepping gracefully to the left. Chloe is carrying far too much momentum. Her hands hit empty air. She stumbles forward, her arms flailing wildly as she is unable to catch her balance in those ridiculous stilettos. She plows headfirst into a stunning, intricately stacked $5,000 crystal champagne tower set up near the entrance for an upcoming toast. The sound of the destruction is deafening. Hundreds of crystal flutes shatter simultaneously, sending a shockwave of breaking glass echoing through the silent dining room. Expensive vintage champagne erupts in a massive golden geyser soaking Chloe from head to toe. She screams as she hits the wet, slippery marble floor, sliding through shards of broken crystal and spilled alcohol. Her rented couture dress clings to her shivering body, completely ruined instantly. The entire restaurant falls completely silent, watching her thrash in the puddle of her own making. During her frantic, chaotic fall, her expensive smartphone flies out of her clutch. It spins rapidly across the wet marble tiles, skidding perfectly across the floor until it hits the tip of my emerald silk heel. I look down at it. Chloe gasps loudly, her eyes widening in absolute terror. She scrambles desperately on her hands and knees, slipping in the puddle of champagne, ignoring the glass cutting into her palms. She screams at me not to look at the screen, but the screen illuminates automatically. A notification pops up bright and clear against the dark marble floor. I do not even have to bend down to read the bold, aggressive text message. It is from a contact saved only under an initial, but the message is explicitly clear. The preview displays raw, explicit threats. Send the next 10,000 by midnight, or I send the hotel videos to your husband. I am tired of waiting. You know exactly what happens if you try to block me again. Suddenly, everything makes perfect sense. The hushed whispers at family dinners about Liam facing massive credit card debt. Chloe constantly blaming inflation and a luxury lifestyle for their drained savings accounts. The secret weekend trips she claimed were for charity events. She was not just cheating on Liam with a dangerous man. She was actively being blackmailed and bleeding her husband dry to keep her filthy secrets hidden behind her pristine suburban facade. She used Liam as a personal ATM to fund her extortion payments while lecturing me about financial responsibility. I slowly bend down and pick up the phone. I wipe a single drop of champagne off the cracked screen. Chloe is still on her knees crying, shivering, humiliated, her hands bleeding slightly from the broken crystal. Liam stands paralyzed a few feet away, watching his wife crawl in the mess. He had rushed back toward the commotion only to freeze when he saw the sheer terror on her face. I look at Liam, then back to Chloe. I casually toss the phone. It lands with a soft smack right in the middle of her soaked, ruined lap. The screen is still glowing brightly for Liam and everyone else to see. "So this is why you keep maxing out Liam's credit cards," I say, my voice carrying clearly and effortlessly through the silent restaurant. "Extortion is a heavy burden, Chloe." Liam stares at the glowing screen, his face draining of all color. He looks at the wife he always placed on a pedestal above me. The woman who constantly judged my character is now sitting in a puddle of shattered glass and blackmail demands. He takes a slow, devastating step backward, entirely broken by the sudden revelation. I do not wait to watch their marriage officially implode. I have a business empire to run. I turn my back on the wreckage, gracefully walking out the glass doors where my mother is already waiting by the armored SUV. The morning after the absolute destruction at the French restaurant, my legal team receives an urgent summons. Marcus and his aggressively overpriced divorce attorney are demanding an immediate emergency mediation. Facing total bankruptcy and public humiliation, Marcus has completely abandoned any pretense of dignity. He is going straight for the money, my money. I walk into the sleek, glass-walled conference room in downtown Atlanta, flanked by my mother's top corporate litigator, Evelyn. She is a woman who eats arrogant men for breakfast, and today she looks particularly hungry. We take our seats on one side of the massive mahogany table. The room smells of expensive leather and desperate panic. Marcus looks absolutely dreadful. The pristine, charismatic tech CEO image is entirely gone. His eyes are bloodshot, his designer suit is wrinkled, and his hands are shaking as he grips his ceramic coffee cup. Sitting next to him is his lawyer, Bradley, a notoriously sleazy litigator known for bullying women in high-net-worth divorces. Bradley does not even wait for the mediator to formally open the session before he goes on the attack. He violently slams a thick stack of printed financial documents onto the center of the table. The loud smack makes Marcus flinch, but Evelyn does not even blink. "My client is demanding exactly 50% of the Sterling venture capital assets," Bradley barks, his voice echoing sharply in the sterile room. Along with a lump sum payment of $50 million in punitive damages and ongoing monthly alimony. Your client maliciously and intentionally committed financial fraud by hiding her multi-billion-dollar net worth during the entirety of their 5-year marriage. She actively deceived my client, leading him to shoulder the entire financial burden of their household. I look at Marcus. He is staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. He actually believes he can bully his way into my family empire just because his own startup is currently crashing and burning. Bradley taps the stack of papers aggressively. We have private financial audits right here proving that Zara Sterling intentionally diverted marital funds. She masqueraded as a low-income freelancer while quietly amassing wealth and plotting to leave my client destitute. If you do not sign over half of the hidden assets today, we will take this to open court and expose her fraudulent behavior to the world media. We will freeze every single account she owns. The silence in the room is heavy and thick. Marcus finally looks up, a smug, desperate spark of hope reigniting in his bloodshot eyes. He really thinks he has cornered me. He thinks his aggressive lawyer has terrified the little obedient wife he used to control. I lean back in my plush leather chair, crossing my legs comfortably. I do not look at the lawyer. I look directly at my ex-husband. You paid for fake financial audits. I state, my voice calm and conversational. You wasted whatever remaining credit you had left to hire a discount accountant to fabricate documents proving I stole from you. That is truly pathetic, Marcus, even for you. Bradley glares at me. These audits are completely legitimate and they prove you committed marital fraud. Evelyn finally speaks, her voice smoother than glass, but sharp as a scalpel. She reaches into her pristine leather briefcase and pulls out a single manila folder. She does not slam it. She places it gently onto the mahogany table and slides it across the polished wood until it rests directly in front of Marcus. I do not think we will be needing those fabricated audits, gentlemen, Evelyn says, folding her hands neatly. Because my client is not giving you 50% of the Sterling Empire. She is not giving you $50 million. She is not giving you a single dime. Marcus scoffs, his face turning red with sudden anger. You cannot just hide billions of dollars from your spouse. I am entitled to half of everything she owns. That is the law. I lean forward, resting my elbows on the table. Do you remember the night before our wedding, Marcus? I ask, keeping my eyes locked onto his. You pulled me into your home office. You had a stack of legal papers waiting. You told me that because your tech startup was going to make you a millionaire, you needed to protect yourself. You said you loved me, but you could not risk a freelancer with a fluctuating income coming after your hard-earned future wealth. You wanted to prove to everyone that you were a self-made man who did not need a woman dragging him down financially. Marcus swallows hard, the color rapidly draining from his face as his memory catches up with the present reality. You demanded a prenuptial agreement. I continue, my voice dropping to a freezing whisper. You insisted on drafting it yourself with your own lawyers to make sure I could never touch your precious company. My mother begged me not to sign it, but I did because I wanted you to feel secure. I wanted to protect your massive, fragile ego. Evelyn taps the manila folder sitting in front of Marcus. Open it, she commands. Marcus slowly reaches out with a trembling hand and opens the folder. Inside is the original yellowed prenuptial agreement he practically shoved down my throat 5 years ago. His signature sits boldly on the bottom line right next to mine. Bradley frowns, leaning over to read the document. A prenup does not override malicious financial deception, he argues weakly. It does when the terms are absolute. Evelyn counters, smiling like a shark. Especially the specific moral clause your client insisted on adding to prove his superior ethical standing. I reach across the table and point my manicured finger at a highly specific paragraph buried on page 4. Read it aloud. Marcus, I demand. Read the exact words you forced into this contract because you wanted to ensure I would never betray your brilliant genius. Marcus stares at the highlighted text. His lips are trembling so violently he can barely form the words. In the event of infidelity, the cheating party forfeits all rights to any shared or individual assets, regardless of when they were acquired. He stops reading, looking like he might pass out right in his chair. The oxygen completely leaves his lungs. You thought you were protecting your phantom millions from me, I state coldly. my voice echoing in the dead silence of the conference room. You brought your mistress into my living room. You proudly paraded her in front of me while demanding a divorce. You violated your own ironclad contract. You signed away your right to my empire to feed your ego, Marcus. The heavy oak door swings open before I even reach the handle. Vivian Sterling strides into my living room like she owns the very oxygen we are breathing. 4 massive men in tailored suits fan out behind her, instantly securing the perimeter with absolute military precision. They block all the exits, their hands folded neatly in front of them, their eyes scanning the space for any potential threats. Marcus scrambles backward, completely abandoning his confident posture and nearly tripping over the edge of the expensive Persian rug he made me pay for. He frantically tries to straighten his silk tie, attempting to summon that fake charismatic CEO persona he uses to charm gullible investors and manipulate board members. He clears his throat, forcing a nervous, desperate smile onto his face. He opens his mouth, probably to offer some slick, pathetic excuse or to try and network his way out of this nightmare. He never gets the chance. My mother does not say a single word of greeting. She simply steps forward, raises her manicured hand, and delivers a resounding crack across his face. The sound echoes off the vaulted ceiling, sharp as a whip snapping in the dead quiet room. Marcus stumbles hard, crashing into the side of an armchair and clutching his rapidly reddening cheek in absolute shock. He looks up at her, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and utter confusion, unable to comprehend that the titan of industry he worships just physically struck him in his own home. My mother towers over him, her presence filling the room with an icy, lethal authority. "You think I did not attend your wedding because I was poor," she demands. Her voice is deceptively quiet, but it carries a heavy, crushing weight that commands total submission. "You honestly believed I was some uneducated woman rotting away in a Chicago housing project because that is the ignorant narrative that made you feel superior. I did not attend your wedding, Marcus, because my daughter was willing to renounce her billion-dollar trust fund just to coddle the fragile ego of a pathetic, mediocre man." She steps closer, forcing him to cower further against the chair upholstery. "I stayed away because Zara begged me to give you a chance to prove you were worth her sacrifice. Clearly, she made a terrible investment, and I do not tolerate bad investments in my portfolio or my family." Marcus looks back and forth between us, his brain desperately trying to process the reality shattering in front of him. He looks at me standing there in my simple blue dress, and then at the billionaire standing fiercely protective in front of me. The realization hits him like a speeding freight train. The useless freelance consultant he just discarded is the sole heir to the very empire he has been begging to save his sinking company. Vanessa is frozen stiff on the sofa. She is clutching her bright orange Hermes Birkin bag against her chest like a protective shield, her eyes darting nervously toward the large security guards blocking the door. I calmly step forward, walking right past my mother, and head straight for the kitchen island. I slide open the top drawer and pull out a heavy pair of stainless steel shears. The metal gleams sharply under the pendant lights as I test the tension of the blades. I walk back into the living room, the heels of my shoes clicking steadily against the hardwood floor, stopping right in front of my husband's trembling mistress. I point the shears directly at the orange leather resting in her lap. "That is a truly beautiful Birkin, Vanessa," I say, keeping my tone light and conversational. "Retail value is around $25,000 if you have the connections to buy it directly from the boutique. But we both know you did not buy it on a marketing director's salary. Marcus bought it for you last Tuesday at exactly 3 in the afternoon." Vanessa pulls the bag tighter against her chest, looking at Marcus for help, but he is entirely paralyzed. "You swiped your exclusive metal black card, Marcus." I continue, turning my attention back to my ex-husband. "The one you love throwing down at expensive steakhouses to impress your Silicon Valley friends. The one you constantly claim is a perk of your brilliant startup success." Marcus swallows hard, a large bead of sweat dripping down his temple. "I earned that card," he stammers, his voice shaking so badly he sounds like a frightened child caught in a lie. "It is my corporate account based on my own credit and my own achievements." I laugh, a genuine bright sound that makes him flinch violently. "You are the CEO of a fintech company, Marcus. You should really learn to read the fine print on your financial statements before making arrogant claims. That black card is nothing but a secondary authorized user card. It is tied directly to a private wealth management account at Sterling Venture Capital, my personal account. I hold out my hand, palm facing up, demanding absolute compliance. Hand it over right now. Marcus hesitates, his ridiculous pride battling his overwhelming terror. One of my mother's security guards simply takes a single step forward, cracking his knuckles loudly. Marcus fumbles frantically in his tailored pockets, practically tearing the expensive fabric to pull out his designer wallet. With trembling fingers, he extracts the heavy black metal card and drops it into my waiting palm, as if it physically burns him. I place the card carefully between the sharp blades of the stainless steel shears and squeeze with all my strength. The metal snaps in two with a sharp, satisfying crunch. The broken pieces fall to the floor, landing right on top of his precious divorce papers. Your account is permanently frozen, Marcus, I state coldly, staring down at him. And by the way, you are trespassing. Just as Marcus opens his mouth to argue, the heavy oak front door swings open again. The satisfying echo of Marcus facing federal agents had barely faded before a new disaster erupted. I am sitting at my mahogany desk on the 50th floor of the Sterling Venture Capital headquarters, reviewing the morning market reports when my intercom buzzes frantically. My lead public relations director bursts through the doors looking completely panicked. She does not even say good morning. She simply drops her tablet directly onto the center of my desk and presses play. I stare at the bright screen. It is a TikTok video posted just 2 hours ago, and it already has 4 million views. The familiar face of my former sister-in-law fills the frame. Chloe has clearly spent hours perfectly curating this impromptu breakdown. She is sitting on her plush suburban sofa, wearing an oversized beige cardigan that swallows her frame, making her look fragile and small. Her blonde hair is pulled up into a messy bun, and she is wiping away invisible tears with the sleeve of her sweater. I am shaking right now, Chloe says to the camera, her voice trembling with manufactured trauma. I debated even posting this because I am so terrified of the retaliation, but people need to know the truth. Last night, my family and I were targeted and violently attacked in public. I lean back in my leather chair watching the performance unfold. Chloe does not mention that she was caught maxing out her husband's credit cards to pay off a blackmailer. She does not mention Liam staring at her explicit text messages while she sat in a puddle of champagne. Instead, she spins a masterclass in white victimhood. She looks directly into the lens, biting her lip perfectly. An aggressive, wealthy black woman, whose family recently acquired dangerous amounts of money, decided she wanted to destroy us. Chloe continues, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. She humiliated my family at a restaurant. When I politely asked her to leave us alone, she violently shoved me into a glass tower. I was bleeding on the floor. I feared for my life. And now she is using her billions to illegally dismantle my brother-in-law's business and terrorize my husband. Please share this. We are just a normal, hardworking family and we are being hunted. I pause the video right as she lets out a loud, perfectly timed sob. The comments scrolling beneath the video are an absolute cesspool. Millions of strangers are calling for my arrest. Hashtags demanding justice for Chloe are trending locally. People are tagging the Atlanta Police Department. Chloe knew exactly what she was doing. Her marriage is imploding because Liam finally saw the truth about her extortion payments, so she desperately needed a distraction. If she paints herself as the helpless victim of a billionaire bully on national internet, Liam cannot file for divorce without looking like he is abandoning a traumatized woman. She is using racist dog whistles to weaponize the internet against me just to save her own skin. Before my public relations director can even suggest a crisis management strategy, the heavy double doors of my office fly open again. My mother marches into the room, vibrating with a lethal, furious energy. Evelyn, our ruthless head of corporate litigation, is right on her heels, holding a thick stack of legal briefs. My mother slams her hands down onto my desk, leaning over to look me dead in the eye. I assume you have seen the garbage your former sister-in-law just posted on the internet, Vivienne demands, her voice dangerously low. She is trending on every major social media platform. The switchboards downstairs are lighting up with reporters asking if the Sterling family has a habit of physically assaulting innocent suburban housewives. Our investors are calling demanding to know why we are wrapped up in a viral internet scandal. I nod calmly, picking up my gold pen. I saw it. It is a very impressive acting job. It is defamation and it ends today. My mother snaps, standing up straight and adjusting her pristine blazer. I will not have some entitled little liar destroying our corporate reputation with her fake tears. Evelyn is drafting a $50 million lawsuit right now. We are going to bury her in civil court. We will freeze every bank account attached to her name. We will take that house she loves so much. We will hit her with an ironclad gag order, so fast she will not even be able to whisper her own name without violating a court mandate. Evelyn steps forward, placing the lawsuit draft on my desk. Just give the word, Zara, and the local sheriff will be serving her these papers before lunchtime. We can issue a press release denying the assault and threatening legal action against anyone who shares the video. I look at the lawsuit. I look at the paused frame of Chloe fake crying on the tablet. I slowly shake my head and push the legal documents back toward Evelyn. No, I say, keeping my voice completely level. We are not suing her. My mother stares at me in absolute disbelief. Zara, she is weaponizing her tears against you. You cannot just sit here and let her control the narrative. I am not letting her control anything. I reply, standing up and walking over to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. If we sue her, we give her exactly what she wants. A lawsuit takes years. It drags out behind closed doors in boring civil courts. She will immediately launch a crowdfunding campaign for her legal defense. She will go on daytime talk shows crying about how the big bad billionaires are trying to silence her with expensive lawyers. She will milk this victim narrative until the end of time, and she will get rich doing it. I turn back to face my mother and Evelyn. I walk back to my desk and pick up a sleek black folder that my private security team delivered early this morning. I had instructed them to dig into every single aspect of Chloe's financial history the second I saw those blackmail texts at the restaurant. If she was bleeding Liam dry to pay off an extortionist, I knew she had to be getting cash from other places too. I open the folder and run my finger down a heavily highlighted list of offshore bank transfers and forged invoice receipts. I look up at my mother, a cold, calculated smile spreading across my face. A lawsuit is too quiet, I say, tossing the background check onto the desk for them to see. Call a press conference for 3 o'clock this afternoon. Invite every major news network in the state. Let us talk about where Chloe actually works. The press briefing room on the ground floor of the Sterling Venture Capital Tower is packed to maximum capacity. Every major news network in Atlanta has a camera positioned at the back of the room, while dozens of reporters crowd the front rows, holding their microphones ready. They are practically buzzing with predatory excitement. They are all expecting a defensive, tearful apology. They want to see the wealthy black billionaire heir desperately try to backtrack and defend herself against the viral allegations of assaulting a fragile white suburban housewife. The media loves a classic angry black woman narrative, and Chloe handed it to them on a silver platter. I walk out from behind the heavy velvet curtains and approach the podium. I do not wear a soft apologetic color. I am dressed in a razor-sharp crimson Tom Ford suit that screams absolute authority. My mother and Evelyn stand silently in the shadows off to the side, letting me take the center stage entirely alone. The moment I step up to the microphones, the room explodes into a chaotic frenzy of shouted questions. Reporters are yelling over each other, asking if I plan to settle out of court, asking if I have anger management issues, asking how my family feels about this public relations disaster. I do not shout back. I do not raise my voice or show a single ounce of frustration. I simply raise my right hand and hold it perfectly still. The sheer commanding weight of that single gesture sweeps through the room, shutting down the noise in a matter of seconds. The journalists fall silent, their camera lenses focused intensely on my face. Good afternoon, I say, my voice echoing clearly through the pristine sound system. I know you are all here today expecting me to address a certain viral video posted by my former sister-in-law, Chloe. You are waiting for me to deny the ridiculous fabricated claims of physical assault at a French restaurant. You want me to play the defensive role in a manufactured social media drama. I am not going to do that. A murmur of confusion ripples through the front row of journalists. I pull a small wireless remote from my pocket. I refuse to validate a racist manipulation tactic designed to distract the public from a much larger and far more sinister issue. I continue looking directly into the primary broadcast camera. Instead of discussing fake internet tears, let us discuss where Chloe actually goes to work every Monday morning. I click the remote. The massive digital screen behind me instantly lights up. It does not show a public relations statement or a legal denial. It displays a highly complex, dense spreadsheet filled with banking routing numbers, wire transfer logs, and offshore account routing codes. The reporters stare at the screen trying to decipher the financial data. For the past 4 years, Chloe has served as the senior financial administrator for the Atlanta Pediatric Hope Foundation. I state my tone dropping to a freezing clinical precision. It is a local charity dedicated to funding life-saving treatments for children battling aggressive forms of cancer. It is a highly respectable organization that relies entirely on the generosity of public donors. I click the remote again. The screen shifts to a side-by-side comparison. On the left are the financial records of the pediatric cancer charity. On the right are encrypted messages and offshore wire demands from an anonymous extortionist. Last night, Chloe had a public meltdown because her deep financial secrets were exposed to her husband, I explain, pacing slowly behind the podium. She has been actively blackmailed by a dangerous man she was romantically involved with outside of her marriage. To keep this man quiet, she required massive amounts of untraceable cash. When she finally maxed out every single credit card under her husband's name, she turned to her place of employment. Gasps echo through this press room. Camera flashes erupt blindingly fast as journalists realize the monumental scale of the scandal I am dropping right into their laps. I click the remote one final time, overlaying the charity's outbound financial transfers directly on top of the blackmailer's deposit logs. The IP addresses, the transaction timestamps, and the exact dollar amounts match flawlessly. Chloe did not just cheat on her husband, I announce, my voice ringing with righteous fury. She actively and systematically embezzled over $200,000 from a pediatric cancer charity. She stole money meant for chemotherapy treatments and bone marrow transplants to pay off her dirty extortionist and to fund her luxurious suburban lifestyle. She drained the accounts of dying children so she could continue buying designer clothes and taking secret weekend vacations. The viral video she posted this morning was nothing but a desperate, calculated smokescreen to distract her husband and the authorities from the fact that her financial crimes were about to be exposed. The press room descends into absolute bedlam. Reporters are shouting frantically into their phones, calling their producers, screaming for their news desks to break the story immediately. I do not answer any of their frantic follow-up questions. I simply set the remote down on the podium, turn my back on the flashing cameras, and walk gracefully behind the velvet curtain, leaving them to tear into the greatest financial scandal of the year. Across town in her pristine suburban living room, Chloe is entirely oblivious to the press conference. She has her phone propped up on a ring light, live streaming to over 50,000 viewers on Instagram. She is sitting on her beige sofa wrapped in her oversized cardigan, producing a fresh stream of fake tears. "I just want to thank everyone for donating to my legal defense fund," she sobs, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "The support has been so overwhelming. It is so terrifying being targeted by such an aggressive, powerful family. But your donations are helping me fight back against this violent woman." Suddenly, a loud, deafening crash shatters the quiet background of her live stream. The heavy wooden front door of her house splinters and gives way entirely. Chloe shrieks in genuine terror, dropping her tissue as heavy combat boots pound against her hardwood floors. Atlanta Police Department. A deep, commanding voice roars through her house. "Do not move." The live stream captures everything in brutal high definition. Half a dozen heavily armed police officers swarm into the perfectly decorated living room. Chloe scrambles backward on her beige sofa, screaming that she is a victim, screaming that there has been a mistake. An officer grabs her arms, spinning her around and forcing them behind her back. The loud, distinct click of metal handcuffs fastening around her wrists echoes clearly through the microphone of her phone. "You are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and embezzlement of charitable funds." The leading officer announces reading her rights as she thrashes and wails against his grip. 50,000 viewers watch, in absolute stunned silence, as the fragile, weeping suburban housewife is violently hauled out of her own living room. The live stream continues broadcasting the empty beige sofa and the shattered front door, proving to the entire world that the greatest weapon against fake tears is undeniable, ruthless financial evidence. The fallout from my press conference hits the city like a massive hurricane. Chloe is denied bail immediately. The judge takes one look at her lavish lifestyle funded by pediatric cancer donations and orders her remanded to the county jail without hesitation. Liam moves out of their expensive suburban home the very next morning. He files for an annulment citing severe criminal fraud and complete moral depravity. The pristine, untouchable facade of my former in-laws is entirely shattered, leaving nothing but public disgrace and impending prison sentences. But the dominoes are not done falling yet. While Chloe trades her cashmere cardigans for a bright orange jumpsuit, my phone rings loudly. It is late Tuesday evening. I am sitting in my penthouse reviewing the aggressive acquisition strategy for Marcus and his failing company when an unknown number flashes on the screen. I answer it, keeping my voice entirely flat. "Speak, Zara, please do not hang up." The voice on the other end is breathless, frantic, and trembling with sheer terror. It is Vanessa. My ex-husband's brilliant marketing director and devoted mistress is currently experiencing a massive reality check. I lean back in my leather chair, tapping my gold pen against the mahogany desk. "I do not have time for you, Vanessa. My legal team is busy preparing the final wire fraud documentation for the federal authorities. Enjoy your evening." "Wait, please, Zara, I am begging you," Vanessa shrieks, her voice cracking completely. "I know about the wire fraud. I know Marcus used the company payroll to buy my car and my jewelry. The feds raided our office today. They took every single computer. They seized all the financial records. Marcus is completely losing his mind, and he is going to throw me under the bus to save himself. I told the federal agents I manipulated the marketing budget. He is setting me up to take the fall for the embezzlement." I smile softly into the quiet room. There is absolutely no honor among thieves. Marcus is a coward who pushed anyone into the line of fire to protect his own skin. And Vanessa is finally realizing that the wealthy, handsome man she stole is nothing but a desperate criminal preparing to sacrifice her to the wolves. "That sounds like a terrible personal problem, Vanessa," I reply coldly. "You chose to sleep with a married man, and you happily accepted stolen funds to fund your lifestyle. You made your bed. Now you get to sit in federal court and explain it to a judge. I have his private hard drive." She blurts out, her words tumbling over each other in absolute desperation. "The hidden drive, Zara. The one he kept locked in the floor safe at his condo. He backed up every single illegal transaction, every hidden account, and every forged investor report. It proves he orchestrated the entire embezzlement scheme by himself. If I give it to you, can you use your billionaire influence to keep me out of prison? I will testify against him. I will do whatever you want." "Please, Zara, I do not want to go to jail." I stop tapping my pen. A hidden hard drive is the exact nail I need for Marcus and his coffin. It will guarantee a federal conviction without dragging the investigation out for months. "I will meet you in 30 minutes, I command, taking total control of the situation. There is a rundown 24-hour diner on the south side of the city right off the interstate. Do not bring anyone. Do not tell Marcus. If I see a single flashing light or suspect a trap, I will personally ensure the federal prosecutor asks for the maximum sentence." "I will be there," Vanessa sobs. "Thank you, Zara, thank you." I end the call and immediately signal my security detail. We mobilize in utter silence. 30 minutes later, my armored vehicle pulls into the flickering neon parking lot of the desolate diner. The rain is pouring down in heavy, relentless sheets, washing the grime off the empty streets. My head of security steps out first, sweeping the perimeter before opening my door. I step into the diner, the smell of burnt coffee and stale grease hitting my senses. Vanessa is sitting in a cracked vinyl booth tucked into the darkest corner of the restaurant. She looks absolutely horrific. The glamorous, confident woman who mocked my clothes in my own living room just days ago is entirely gone. Her blonde hair is matted, her designer mascara is running down her pale cheeks, and she is violently chewing on her fingernails. I slide into the booth across from her, signaling my security guards to block the main entrance. I do not order anything. I just hold out my hand. Vanessa reaches into her oversized coat pocket, her hands shaking so badly she can barely grasp the small rectangular device. She pulls out a silver external hard drive and places it onto the sticky formica table. "It is all in there," she whispers, tears spilling over her eyelashes. "The fake shell companies, the payroll diversions, the forged board member signatures. He ruined my life, Zara. He promised me we were going to build an empire together. He told me you were just a useless burden holding him back." I look at the silver drive. I do not feel an ounce of pity for her. "You wanted an empire, Vanessa," I state sharply, sliding the hard drive across the table until it rests safely in my hand. "You just did not want to do the actual work to build one. You wanted to steal mine. You do not get to play the victim just because the man you helped steal from me turned out to be a monster." Vanessa opens her mouth to beg for my legal protection again, but the words instantly die in her throat. Her bloodshot eyes widen in absolute horror as she stares at the front door fearfully. The metal bell above the heavy glass door violently clangs against the rusted frame. Heavy rain blows sideways into the desolate diner, carrying a gust of freezing air. Standing in the entryway, soaking wet, is Marcus. His expensive suit is ruined, plastered to his skin by the downpour. His hair sticks to his forehead, and his eyes are wide, bloodshot, and manic. He looks exactly like a cornered animal who just realized the deadly trap has finally closed around him. He scans the dimly lit restaurant, his frantic gaze skipping past empty booths until it locks onto Vanessa and the silver hard drive resting securely in my hand. "You treacherous lying snake!" Marcus screams at the top of his lungs. He ignores my presence, charging down the narrow aisle directly toward our booth. His hands are curled into tight fists, his knuckles white with pure rage. "You are selling me out to the authorities to save your own miserable skin after everything I bought for you. I gave you that promotion. I gave you the lifestyle you begged for." Vanessa shrieks and scrambles backward. She throws her trembling hands up to protect her face, sobbing loudly and hysterically. Marcus violently lunges forward. My security detail moves quickly. Before Marcus can extend his arm toward Vanessa, my lead guard steps out from the shadows. He grabs Marcus by the wet collar. Two more guards immediately descend, pinning him to the floor. The guards hold him securely down like a sack of dead weight. I simply pick up my warm white ceramic mug and take a slow, deliberate sip of my chamomile tea. The chamomile is surprisingly good for a roadside diner. "Let me go," Marcus gasps. "Zara, tell them to let me up. She is the one who ruined everything. She manipulated the marketing budget to hide the missing funds. She is trying to pin my entire company failure on my shoulders just to walk away rich." I set my teacup down gently, right next to the silver hard drive. "You really have lost your touch, Marcus," I say. "A year ago, you could lie with such effortless charm. Now you are just shouting pathetic excuses, trying to blame your mistress for the exact wire fraud you orchestrated." Marcus stops struggling. He realizes exactly what I am holding. "Zara, please," he begs, his voice cracking pitifully. "You have the drive. You can destroy it. We can fix this. Think about our history. Remember when your mother fell ill. Remember how I supported you during those long nights at the hospital. I stood by you. I am your family. You cannot send me to federal prison." I look down at him, feeling absolutely nothing but cold clarity. "You did not support me at all, Marcus," I correct him sharply. "You resented every second my attention was not focused entirely on building your fragile ego. You never stood by me. You just stood on my shoulders." Vanessa lets out a loud breath of relief, lowering her hands. She looks at me with tears of profound gratitude streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you, Zara," she cries, reaching across the table as if to hold my hand. I pull my hand back instantly. "Thank you so much for stopping him. I knew I could trust you. I gave you the hard drive just like you asked. You have all the evidence you need to put him away forever. Now you can use your legal team to shield me, right? You promised you would keep me out of prison." I look at Vanessa, picking up the silver hard drive and slipping it safely into my blazer pocket. I pick up my teacup again, meeting her desperate gaze. I never once said I was saving you, Vanessa. Her grateful smile freezes, dropping off her face like a stone. What she whispers, her voice shaking uncontrollably. But I gave you the drive. I helped you. You helped yourself, I state clinically, and you were far too late. Did you genuinely believe I would deploy my billionaire legal team to protect a woman who happily financed her luxury lifestyle with stolen funds? I do not reward thieves, Vanessa. I expose them. I gesture casually toward the small dome cameras mounted in the upper corners of the dingy diner. I bought this establishment 4 hours ago, I reveal, watching horror wash over her pale face. Those cameras are currently live streaming high-definition audio and video directly to a secure server at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. My financial team already traced both your digital footprints. They handed over every single offshore routing number, every fake invoice you signed, and every wire transfer Marcus authorized. The federal prosecutor has the entire package. Marcus lets out a guttural scream of absolute defeat, struggling pointlessly against the security guards holding him down. Vanessa slumps back against the vinyl booth, burying her face in her hands and sobbing uncontrollably. The reality of their shared destruction has finally arrived. In the distance, the faint sound of wailing sirens pierces through the heavy rain. The high-pitched shrieks grow rapidly louder, echoing down the desolate interstate and multiplying as multiple vehicles approach. Red and blue lights begin to flash through the front windows of the diner, casting harsh, menacing shadows across Marcus' terrified face. I stand up from the booth, smoothing the front of my tailored suit. I motion for my guards to release Marcus and step back. Marcus stays on the floor, too completely broken to even attempt to stand. I walk around the table, stepping gracefully right over his trembling legs. You two deserve each other in federal court, I say, looking down at the wreckage of the two people who thought they could destroy me for their own gain. I slowly walk out the glass doors, pulling my winter coat tight against the cold rain, just as a dozen armed federal agents rush past me into the diner to arrest them both. The red and blue lights fade as my armored vehicle glides down the slicked interstate. Leaving Marcus and Vanessa to face the federal agents was deeply satisfying, but the collapse of my former husband's world is not finished yet. It takes exactly 48 hours for the absolute ruin of their prestigious suburban family to become the top news story across every local network in Atlanta. Their golden boy Marcus is sitting in a federal holding cell denied bail because he poses a severe flight risk. Their pristine daughter-in-law Chloe is locked away in county jail facing a mountain of grand larceny charges. Liam is actively filing for an annulment and hiding from the press. Eleanor and Thomas, the proud, arrogant parents who spent 5 years looking down their noses at me, are completely destroyed. Their elite country club memberships are revoked. The suburban royalty they pretended to be has been exposed as a house of cards built on embezzlement and charity fraud. I am standing in the sunlit atrium of the Sterling Venture Capital headquarters when my security director approaches me. He informs me that we have a highly disruptive situation developing at the main entrance. I follow him to the security control room and look at the live camera feeds displaying the heavy wrought iron gates securing our corporate plaza. Standing on the sidewalk, ignoring the pouring rain, are Eleanor and Thomas. They look absolutely pathetic. Eleanor is wearing a drenched designer coat, her expensive blowout ruined by the weather. Thomas is leaning heavily against the metal bars, looking entirely broken. These are the exact same people who cornered me in my own kitchen and called me an uneducated burden who would inevitably drag their brilliant son down into poverty. Now they are shaking the security gates of my family empire, weeping openly and begging the guards to let them speak to me. My security director asks if he should call the police to have them removed for trespassing. I stare at the monitors, watching Eleanor fall to her knees on the wet concrete, pleading with a stone-faced guard. I shake my head. Calling the police would allow them to play the victim narrative they love so much. I will handle this myself, I say, turning away from the glowing screens. I walk across the marble lobby, the heels of my shoes clicking with absolute authority. My security team forms a protective wedge around me as the heavy glass doors slide open. I walk down the wide granite steps, approaching the wrought iron gates. The moment Eleanor spots me, she lets out a loud theatrical wail. "Zara, please, you have to help us." Eleanor cries, gripping the wet metal bars with her trembling hands. They are treating Marcus like a common criminal. We tried to hire a private defense attorney, but Marcus drained our entire retirement savings to keep his company afloat before the feds raided it. We have absolutely nothing left, Zara. They are going to take our house. Thomas steps forward, his voice cracking with emotion. You have billions, he pleads, wiping rain from his face. You can afford the best legal team in the country. You can pay his bail without even noticing the money is gone. Please, Zara, he is your husband. You cannot just let him rot in a federal prison. I stand perfectly still observing their humiliating performance. They do not apologize for the years of emotional abuse they inflicted upon me. They do not express a single ounce of remorse for the fact that their son stole hundreds of thousands of dollars and flaunted his mistress in my living room. They only care that their comfortable, pristine lives have been ripped away. We are family. Eleanor sobs, pushing her wet face against the iron bars. I know we had our differences in the past, but family must forgive. You simply have to save us. Family must forgive. I repeat her words, my voice devoid of any warmth. That is an interesting philosophy, Eleanor. Did you practice forgiveness when you told Marcus he should have married a woman with a proper pedigree instead of settling for someone you considered beneath your social class? Thomas shakes his head wildly. We were wrong, he shouts over the heavy rain. We were completely ignorant and we admit it. We will issue a public apology if that is what you want. We will do whatever you demand. Just sign the check for his bail, Zara, I beg of you. I do not yell back at them. Raising my voice would imply that they have the power to affect my emotional state. They lost that power the moment I shattered Marcus' arrogant illusion. I slowly reach into the deep pocket of my tailored blazer. My fingers trace the smooth edge of an object I retrieved from my personal safe earlier this morning. I pull it out, holding it up for both of them to see. It is a small leather-bound notebook. Its edges are slightly worn. Eleanor and Thomas stop crying for a fraction of a second, staring at the small black book with deep confusion. They expected me to pull out a checkbook or a pen. You want me to save your son because we are family, I state coldly, my eyes locking onto Eleanor's pale face. You invoke the sacred bond of family to wipe away your complicity in his arrogance. You think a pathetic display of begging on my sidewalk will erase the hatred you directed at me for half a decade. I take one slow step closer to the gate. I do not offer them a single dime. I simply drop the leather-bound notebook right through the gaps in the cold iron bars. It lands with a heavy, wet thud directly at my former mother-in-law's soaking wet shoes. Eleanor stares down at the wet leather notebook resting against her ruined designer shoes. Rain pounds against the dark cover. She looks at it with dread. Thomas shifts uncomfortably beside her. Pick it up, I command, my voice slicing through the downpour. Open it to the highlighted page and read it aloud. Eleanor hesitates, her hands shaking violently from the freezing rain. Her knees scrape against the wet concrete as she retrieves the small book. Her manicured fingers fumble with the damp cover. She flips it open, tracing the bright yellow tab. The pages are crisp parchment filled with handwritten medical notes and official hospital stamps. What is this? She whispers, her eyes darting across the terminology. This looks like a hospital chart. It is a certified copy of an attending nurse's incident log, I explain, taking a step closer to the iron bars. I obtained it from the archives at Atlanta General Hospital. Read the highlighted paragraph, Eleanor. Read the words you spoke when you thought I was unconscious. Eleanor looks down at the page. The color vanishes from her face rapidly. Her jaw drops open, but no sound comes out. She reads the text silently, her eyes widening in absolute horror. The fabricated tears she was crying completely dry up, replaced by genuine panic. Read it, I demand. She cannot bring herself to speak. The shame is paralyzing her. She shakes her head, looking desperately at Thomas for a lifeline that does not exist. Thomas leans over her shoulder, peering through the rain to read the text. He freezes instantly, his eyes locking onto mine with deep, sickening guilt. Since your memory fails, I will recite it for you. I state, my voice echoing coldly. 3 years ago, I was in an emergency room bed, bleeding out from a devastating miscarriage. I was losing my child. My body was in shock. You walked into that hospital room while the doctors were rushing to stabilize my vitals. You stood at the foot of my bed, looked at my terrified husband, and you said the most vile, unforgivable words I have ever heard. Eleanor squeezes her eyes shut, sobbing tears of profound shame. Please, Zara, she begs softly. I was so ignorant, I was horribly wrong. I ignore her pathetic whimpering. You looked at Marcus and you said it is a blessing to lose this mixed-class burden. Now you can find a woman on your level. I quote the exact sentence perfectly, my voice ringing with righteous fury. You celebrated the death of my baby because you were disgusted that your golden boy married a black woman without a trust fund. You smiled at my bleeding body and told your son he was free to upgrade. Thomas steps back from the gate, covering his mouth with his hand. He was standing right next to her in that emergency room when she said it. He did not reprimand her. He did not defend his grieving daughter-in-law. His silence that night was an absolute endorsement of her cruelty. You thought no one heard you because Marcus ushered you out, I continue. But the attending triage nurse heard every single word. She was adjusting my intravenous drip right behind the privacy curtain. She was so disgusted by your sheer lack of basic humanity that she officially documented your exact quote in the psychological distress section of my incident log. She recorded your horrific prejudice for eternity. Eleanor drops the notebook onto the wet concrete. She covers her face, weeping uncontrollably. She has no defense. She cannot claim I misunderstood. She cannot gaslight me into believing it was a simple miscommunication. The undeniable written proof is sitting right at her feet. And now you have the audacity to show up at my corporate headquarters, I say, staring down at her shaking form. You kneel in the rain and invoke the sacred name of family to beg for my billions. You demand that I empty my bank accounts to save your thieving, arrogant son from a federal prison cell. You are a cold hypocrite who values social status over human life. I take a slow, deep breath, letting the freezing rain wash over the silence between us. Thomas tries to reach through the gate to grab my hand, but I step back out of his reach. Zara, we are incredibly sorry. He pleads, his voice cracking with desperation. We will spend the rest of our lives making it up to you. Please do not let him rot in jail. Marcus is exactly where he belongs, I reply, my tone completely detached and final. And you two are exactly where you belong. Standing on the outside in the cold, begging for scraps from the very woman you repeatedly tried to destroy. I suggest you call a cab. You have a long, miserable walk back to whatever cheap motel you are staying in tonight. I turn my back on them without any hesitation. I do not feel anger anymore. I do not feel grief for the family I never truly had. I only feel a profound, soaring sense of absolute liberation. The heavy burden of their toxic entitlement has finally been severed. I walk up the granite steps, my security detail falling into perfect formation around me. The sound of Eleanor wailing by the gates fades into the background noise until it is swallowed by the pouring rain. As I reach the grand glass doors of the headquarters, my lead executive assistant hurries out to meet me. She is holding a sleek silver tablet and a pristine leather portfolio. She falls into step beside me as we walk through the opulent marble lobby. Emma Sterling, my assistant, says, her voice crisp. The emergency board meeting for Marcus startup is ready. The executives and the remaining investors are seated in the primary boardroom on the top floor. They are waiting nervously for the new majority shareholder to arrive and dictate the future of the corporation. Excellent, I reply to my lead executive assistant, stepping gracefully into the back of the waiting armored vehicle. Tell the driver to take us straight to the financial district. It is finally time to meet my new employees. Across the city, Marcus is frantically trying to salvage the smoldering wreckage of his career. Having completely drained the very last cent of his parents' retirement funds to post his exorbitant federal bail, he is currently a man running entirely on fumes and delusion. He had to sneak out the back door of the federal courthouse, dodging a massive swarm of aggressive reporters, screaming questions about his embezzlement charges. Now he is pacing outside the heavy oak doors of his startup primary boardroom. He is sweating profusely, his expensive silk collar sticking uncomfortably to his neck. He reeks of absolute desperation and stale coffee, but he is desperately trying to summon that old arrogant swagger he used to control the narrative. He violently straightens his tie, takes a deep, ragged breath and pushes open the double doors, striding into the room, as if he still owns the entire world. The long, frosted glass table is surrounded by his remaining executive board members and furious minority investors. The atmosphere in the room is highly toxic. Their smartphones are constantly buzzing with devastating news alerts about the federal raid, the wire fraud, and the catastrophic loss of their primary angel investor. Marcus does not apologize when he takes his seat at the head of the polished table. He actually scoffs at their panicked, terrified expressions. "Gentlemen, please calm down," Marcus announces, slamming his palms flat against the glass surface to assert his fading dominance. "I know the sudden federal raid looks terrible for our public relations, but I have everything completely under control. The wire fraud accusations are a massive misunderstanding, orchestrated by a highly disgruntled and manipulative employee." He looks around the silent room, expecting them to nod along blindly, like they always used to do when he spun his corporate lies. "Vanessa manipulated our internal marketing budgets." He lies effortlessly, throwing his devoted mistress directly to the wolves without a single ounce of hesitation or remorse. "She forged my signature on those offshore wire transfers while I was busy coding the new financial algorithm. She is a vicious thief and a pathological liar who used her position to steal from this company. I have already instructed my legal counsel to draft a public statement completely disavowing her actions. The federal authorities will lock her away for a very long time, and our company will emerge from this scandal totally clean and entirely blameless." The board members stare at him in dead, suffocating silence. No one is taking notes. No one is agreeing with his fabricated story. David, the chief financial officer, who had frantically called him during his eviction, is rubbing his temples in sheer disbelief. The chairman of the board, an older, stern man named Harrison, simply adjusts his silver glasses and looks at Marcus with profound, absolute disgust. Marcus misreads their heavy silence as doubt and immediately doubles down on his raging arrogance. "Listen to me very carefully," he snaps, his voice rising in panic and desperate frustration. "You need me sitting in the CEO chair. You absolutely cannot afford to lose me today. My unique genius is the only thing keeping this entire company afloat right now. I built that proprietary algorithm from scratch. I know the complex codes inside and out. If you even think about voting me out to save face with the media, this startup will plunge into total bankruptcy by tomorrow morning. I am the brand," Marcus shouts, pointing a trembling finger at his own chest. "I am the visionary leader holding this fragile ecosystem together. Without me, you are all holding utterly worthless stock in a dead company." He leans back in his leather chair, wiping thick sweat from his upper lip, attempting a smug, victorious smile that fails miserably. "So we are going to draft a unified board statement defending my leadership immediately. And then we are going to wait patiently for the new majority shareholder to arrive so I can personally pitch my aggressive restructuring plan. Whoever this mysterious new investor is, they clearly recognize my absolute brilliance if they bought up 65% of our shares during a massive crisis. They know I am the key to their future profits and massive financial success." Harrison sighs heavily, picking up a thick legal portfolio resting on the table in front of him. "The new majority shareholder does not want to hear your ridiculous restructuring pitch," Marcus Harrison states, his voice entirely stripped of any remaining respect. "In fact, I highly doubt she cares about your so-called genius at all." Marcus frowns, his arrogant smile finally faltering as absolute confusion washes over his pale, sweating face. He asks, his voice cracking slightly with sudden creeping dread. Before Marcus can demand a further explanation, the heavy oak doors of the boardroom swing violently open. The loud crash echoes sharply through the tense, sterile room. Harrison stands up immediately, buttoning his suit jacket and bowing his head in a display of absolute profound respect. The other board members quickly follow suit, scrambling out of their plush chairs to stand at strict, rigid attention. They are not standing for Marcus. They are standing for the extraordinarily powerful woman walking through the doorway. I step into the boardroom wearing a razor-sharp charcoal gray Tom Ford suit that screams lethal corporate power. My heels click rhythmically against the hardwood floor, echoing like the steady ticking of a countdown clock marking his ultimate demise. Flanking me on my right is Vivian, her very presence suffocating the room. Behind us marches an absolute army of elite corporate lawyers, carrying briefcases full of devastating, irrefutable evidence. Marcus freezes completely, his arrogant expression dissolving into pure, unfiltered terror as he stares at the woman he once called useless. Marcus lets out a sharp, nervous laugh that echoes awkwardly against the frosted glass walls of the massive executive suite. His eyes dart frantically between the seated board members and my tailored charcoal gray suit as his mind aggressively rejects the reality standing right in front of him. "What is this?" he stammers, wiping a thick layer of cold sweat from his forehead. "Is this some kind of sick, elaborate prank?" "Zara, why are you walking into a closed confidential executive meeting? Did they hire you to clean the boardroom tables because your little freelance data entry gigs finally dried up?" A few sharp gasps ripple across the large conference table, but absolutely no one laughs at his pathetic sexist joke. My mother Vivian merely tilts her head, offering him a smile so devoid of human warmth it could freeze boiling water. My army of elite corporate lawyers fan out around the perimeter of the room, effortlessly locking the heavy oak doors and taking up strategic positions behind the seated executives. The tension in the air is suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Harrison, the chairman of the board, stands up abruptly, slamming his flat palm onto the glass table to cut off any further humiliation. "Marcus, shut your mouth right now," Harrison orders, his voice echoing with absolute rigid authority. "You are embarrassing yourself, and you are deeply disrespecting the only person capable of saving this firm from total liquidation." Harrison turns to me, buttoning his suit jacket and bowing his head respectfully once again. "Marcus, meet Ms. Zara Sterling. She is representing the Sterling Venture Capital Fund. She quietly bought 65% of our outstanding shares at dawn this morning, while you were busy draining your parents' retirement accounts to post your federal bail. She is the new majority shareholder. She is your boss." The world entirely stops for Marcus. I watch the precise, terrifying second his entire fabricated reality shatters into a million irreparable pieces. The arrogant color drains completely from his face, leaving him a sickening shade of pale ashen gray. His mouth opens and closes rapidly, but his paralyzed vocal cords refuse to produce a single solitary sound. He looks at my flawless designer suit, and then at my billionaire mother standing fiercely protective at my side. The devastating math finally calculates in his narcissistic brain. He did not just divorce a quiet, supportive wife. He maliciously discarded the sole heir to a multi-billion-dollar real estate and investment empire who was secretly financing his entire luxurious lifestyle behind his back. I do not give him a single moment to catch his breath or formulate a manipulative excuse. I walk purposefully toward the head of the boardroom table. Harrison steps aside, immediately offering me the massive leather executive chair that Marcus has proudly claimed as his own personal throne for the past 3 years. I sit down gracefully, smoothing the fine fabric of my trousers. I pick up the heavy wooden gavel resting on the center of the glass table, feeling the solid weight of absolute power in my hand. Marcus falls back against the frosted glass wall, his legs trembling so violently they can barely support his own body weight. "Zara," he whispers, his voice cracking with sheer naked desperation. "Zara, please, you cannot do this to me. I founded this company. I built this financial software from absolutely nothing. This is my entire life." I raise the wooden gavel and strike the glass table with a loud, resounding crack that instantly silences his pathetic whimpering. "This emergency board meeting is now officially in session," I announce, my voice ringing with cold, clinical precision. "I am bypassing all preliminary financial reports and moving straight to direct executive action. First order of business, terminating the current chief executive officer, Marcus, for gross ethical violations, severe financial mismanagement, and active federal wire fraud." Harrison and the remaining terrified board members instantly raise their hands in unanimous, eager agreement. The vote is passed definitively before Marcus can even blink his bloodshot eyes. "You cannot fire me," Marcus screams, lunging forward slightly before 2 of my massive security guards step squarely into his path, blocking his aggressive advance. "I am the brand. I am the face of this entire operation. The investors will flee if you remove my genius from the equation." The investors already fled, Marcus, I remind him sharply, staring him down. I am the only investor left in this room, and I find your face entirely bad for my business. I raise the gavel and strike the table a second time, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Second order of business. The board is officially filing a corporate civil lawsuit against the former CEO for $15 million in operational damages and stolen corporate assets. We will be seizing every single remaining asset he possesses to recover the funds he brazenly embezzled to buy luxury jewelry and sports cars for his mistress. Marcus drops hard to his knees. The fabric of his ruined, damp suit tears against the hardwood floor. He is sobbing openly now, the arrogant, untouchable tech genius reduced to a blubbering mess of pure panic and endless regret. "Zara, please, I am begging you," he cries, crawling forward on his hands and knees like a desperate animal. "Do not take the company from me. You already took the house. You exposed my family on national television. You gave the hard drive to the federal agents. I have absolutely nothing left to my name. If you sue me for $15 million, I will be paying it off from a prison cafeteria for the rest of my natural life. I am sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything. Just let me keep my job. I will work under you. I will do whatever you demand." I look down at the man who spent half a decade making me feel incredibly small just so he could feel tall. I remember the night he invited his mistress into my living room and called my mother just to demand she haul away her useless daughter. He did not care about my future or my dignity then, and I certainly do not care about his future or his dignity now. "You confidently told my mother I contributed nothing to your career, Marcus," I state coldly, staring down at his weeping, miserable form. "You were completely wrong. I am contributing the exact closure this disastrous company desperately needs today." I turn my attention to the head of my security detail standing rigidly by the heavy boardroom doors. "Security," I command, pointing my gold pen directly at my sobbing ex-husband. "Throw him out." The guards move with terrifying, ruthless efficiency. They grab Marcus by the arms, hauling him up from the floor with brutal ease. He thrashes and screams, kicking his expensive leather shoes against the polished wood, begging loudly for one more chance. The executives at the table watch in complete stunned silence as the man who arrogantly lied to them just 10 minutes ago is physically dragged out of the very building he founded. His desperate, pathetic cries echo down the long hallway, fading into absolute nothingness as the heavy oak doors slam shut behind him, sealing his total and final ruin. I turn my attention back to the stunned, silent board members. "Now, gentlemen," I say, opening a sleek black portfolio, "let us discuss how we are going to make this company profitable again." 3 weeks later, the polished mahogany doors of the Fulton County Civil Court swing shut, sealing Marcus inside with the absolute worst nightmare of his life. He is standing at the defendant's table entirely alone. There is no aggressive legal shark whispering in his ear today. There is no slick corporate defense team organizing his paperwork. Having completely drained his parents' retirement accounts to post his federal bail and facing a massive freeze on all his known assets, Marcus could not afford to retain a single reputable attorney. He has been forced to represent himself pro se, standing in front of a relentless judge with nothing but a cheap legal pad and a visibly trembling hand. I sit on the opposite side of the courtroom, flanked by Evelyn and a highly specialized team of forensic accountants. I am wearing a tailored cream-colored blazer, my posture perfectly relaxed. I watch Marcus nervously adjust the collar of his suit. It is the same navy Italian silk suit he wore to our mediation, but it hangs loosely on his frame, now wrinkled and carrying the distinct smell of cheap dry cleaning. The arrogant tech visionary, who used to mock my freelance data entry gigs, is currently sweating under the harsh fluorescent lights of the courtroom, desperately trying to remember legal jargon he probably Googled late last night. "Your Honor." Marcus begins, his voice cracking slightly as he addresses Judge Abernathy, a stern, no-nonsense magistrate with zero tolerance for corporate fraud. The plaintiff is engaging in a malicious witch hunt. The $15 million they are demanding for corporate damages is completely baseless. I admit to some minor accounting discrepancies, but I have no hidden wealth to surrender. They have already frozen my primary checking accounts and seized my equity. You cannot squeeze blood from a stone. Evelyn does not even bother to stand up. She simply slides a thick bound ledger across the defense table, her expression carved from pure ice. "We are not looking for blood," Mr. Marcus Evelyn states, her voice echoing sharply in the silent courtroom. "We are looking for the vintage Porsche 911 you purchased entirely in cash and fraudulently registered under your brother Liam's name just 2 days before you filed for divorce. We are also looking for the offshore cryptocurrency wallets you funneled company payroll into." Marcus goes completely rigid. His hands grip the edges of his wooden table, his knuckles turning stark white. "That Porsche belongs to my brother," he stammers wildly, his eyes darting toward the judge. "He bought it as an investment. This is absolute hearsay." Evelyn raises a single manicured finger, signaling one of our forensic accountants. The accountant projects a digital bank statement onto the large monitor mounted on the courtroom wall. The screen clearly displays a wire transfer of $140,000 moving directly from the fintech startup's operating account into a luxury car dealership escrow. The signature authorizing the wire is bold and unmistakable. It is Marcus' own handwriting. I look at my ex-husband, watching the absolute terror completely consume his features. I remember sitting at our kitchen island 3 years ago, struggling to balance my small business taxes. Marcus had walked past me, scoffing loudly and snatching the calculator from my hands. He told me I was too mathematically illiterate to handle simple adult finances. He said he needed to manage all our household accounts because a woman with my lower-class background simply lacked the intellectual capacity to understand complex money management. He genuinely believed his white-collar crimes were far too sophisticated for me to ever unravel. I was wrong. I spent the last 3 weeks weaponizing my entire venture capital network to hunt down every single dime he ever tried to hide. Your Honor. Evelyn continues, smoothly flipping to the next page of her indisputable evidence. We also have certified blockchain ledgers proving the defendant holds approximately $2.5 million in untraceable digital currency. He actively moved these funds during the exact time frame he claimed his startup was experiencing a cash flow crisis. We are submitting formal requests to seize these digital assets, the luxury vehicle, the downtown condo he secretly purchased for his mistress, and every single piece of designer jewelry he acquired using stolen corporate funds. "I object," Marcus shouts, slamming his fist onto his legal pad. "You cannot take the condo. That property is under a separate holding company. You are trying to leave me homeless on the streets." Objection overruled. Mr. Marcus, Judge. Abernathy responds instantly, his voice heavy with profound disgust. "You lost the right to claim financial hardship the moment you actively embezzled millions of dollars from your own shareholders to fund a secondary lifestyle. The evidence presented by the plaintiff's legal team is overwhelming and irrefutable. You have systematically engaged in gross corporate malfeasance." Marcus' legs finally give out. He collapses heavily into his hard wooden chair, gasping for air, as if the room is rapidly losing oxygen. He stares at the digital monitor displaying his ruined financial web. Every single safety net he thought he cleverly constructed has been methodically identified and completely dismantled. There is nowhere left to run, and there is absolutely no one left to steal from. I stand up slowly, walking around the plaintiff table until I am standing directly in his line of sight. I do not raise my voice. I do not gloat or scream. I simply look down at the man who called my mother to haul away her useless daughter. "You built your entire identity on the illusion of being a self-made genius." "Marcus," I say, my voice perfectly steady, carrying effortlessly across the quiet courtroom. "But you never built anything. You just siphoned the success of those people around you and called it your own." Judge Abernathy strikes his heavy wooden gavel, sealing Marcus' fate with a loud, definitive crack. "The court finds entirely in favor of the plaintiff," Judge Abernathy announces, reading from his final ruling. "The defendant is hereby ordered to pay $15 million in corporate restitution. All identified hidden assets, vehicles, and properties are to be immediately seized and liquidated. Furthermore, given the severe scale of the defendant's financial liabilities, the court authorizes the maximum legal garnishment of any and all future wages the defendant may ever earn until this monumental debt is fully satisfied." The gavel strikes a second time. Marcus is officially left with less than zero. He owes a staggering $15 million that he can never possibly repay. Every paycheck he ever earns for the rest of his natural life will be aggressively seized by my legal team before it even hits his bank account. He is a financial ghost, shackled to a massive mountain of permanent debt. Marcus buries his face in his hands, weeping openly and loudly in the center of the courtroom. The arrogant CEO is entirely gone. He is just a broken, destitute man facing a lifetime of absolute ruin. I turn my back on his pathetic sobbing and walk gracefully down the center aisle toward the heavy mahogany exit doors. My work in this courtroom is completely finished, but the systematic dismantling of his accomplices is just about to begin. 48 hours later, I am sitting in the federal courthouse. Today is Chloe's final sentencing hearing. Chloe sits at the defense table looking like a ghost. She abandoned her expensive designer gowns and flashy jewelry. Instead, she wears a plain beige blouse and gray skirt. Her blonde hair is pulled back into a tight bun. She desperately tries to project the image of an innocent woman who made a tiny mistake. Federal judges are not gullible teenagers scrolling on their phones. Her attorney calls her to the stand for a final plea of leniency. Chloe walks up, her shoulders slumped, her hands trembling visibly. She begins to cry the moment she takes the oath. She looks out, making sure the journalists catch every single tear. I sit in the second row, completely unbothered by her performance. I was under so much pressure, Chloe weeps, gripping the wooden stand. My husband comes from a very wealthy, demanding family. I felt forced to constantly maintain this impossible luxury standard just to be accepted. The pressure of social media completely broke my judgment. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was just trying to survive in a demanding world. I watch her deploy the ultimate weapon of white female victimhood. She actively blames her crimes on marrying into a successful black family. She tries convincing the judge that Marcus and Liam forced her into embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars. It is a repulsive, calculated strategy designed to shift the blame away from her own greed. Judge Ramirez, a formidable woman with sharp eyes, sitting on the federal bench, is not moved by the tears. She looks down at Chloe with an expression of pure, unfiltered disgust. Judge Ramirez flips open the thick sentencing report resting on her elevated desk. Mrs. Chloe Judge Ramirez begins, her voice slicing through the quiet courtroom like a blade. You are asking this court for probation. You are asking me to believe social media pressure forced you to steal. Let me read exactly who you stole from. The judge holds up a financial statement. You embezzled over $200,000 from the Atlanta Pediatric Hope Foundation. You intercepted wire transfers intended to pay for bone marrow transplants for children suffering from leukemia. You forged invoices for chemotherapy treatments and redirected those funds to a blackmailer threatening to expose your affairs. You stole from dying children to cover up your infidelity. Chloe chokes on a sob, shaking her head wildly. I am sorry. I will pay it back. My husband can pay it back. Your husband is currently facing absolute financial ruin because of his association with your actions. Judge Ramirez fires back, shutting the folder with a definitive slam. The prosecution offered a plea deal for probation if you fully cooperated early. You refused. You chose to go on the internet and post defamatory videos accusing innocent people. You showed zero remorse until sitting in that chair facing actual consequences. Chloe looks frantically at her defense attorney, but the lawyer simply stares at the table, knowing the battle is completely lost. There will be no leniency today, Judge Ramirez declares, her voice echoing with absolute finality. The exploitation of vulnerable, sick children to fund a luxury lifestyle is one of the most morally bankrupt acts I have seen in my courtroom. I am denying the request for probation. I am denying the request for house arrest. Chloe lets out a loud, piercing shriek. She grabs the edges of the witness stand, her face turning a blotchy red. No, please, you cannot send me to prison. I am not a criminal. I am a good person. You are remanded to the immediate custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Judge Ramirez continues, entirely ignoring the hysterical outburst. I sentence you to 5 years in federal prison without the possibility of early parole. Court is adjourned. The strike of the gavel sounds like an explosion in the tense room. 2 female federal marshals immediately step forward, grabbing Chloe by her trembling arms. They haul her up from the witness chair. She thrashes wildly, screaming at the top of her lungs, crying out for someone to save her from the nightmare she created. She looks desperately toward the gallery, searching for a lifeline. Her frantic eyes lock onto Liam, who is sitting just 3 seats away from me. Liam looks completely hollowed out. The arrogant brother-in-law who used to drink my wine and insult my career is entirely broken. He has spent the last month watching his entire world collapse, watching his brother go bankrupt and watching the woman he loved be exposed as a vile thief. Liam, please help me. Chloe screams, her voice cracking with sheer terror as the marshals drag her toward the holding cell doors. Do not let them take me. Call the lawyers. Fix this. Liam does not stand up to defend her. He does not yell at the judge or beg the marshals to stop. He slowly reaches into the interior pocket of his dark suit jacket. He pulls out a thick folded legal document. It is the official annulment paperwork. He clicks a black pen, opens the document on the gallery bench, and signs his name on the final dotted line. His signature is definitive. He hands the paperwork to his attorney sitting beside him. He looks up at his screaming wife one last time. There is no love in his eyes. There is no pity. There is only a deep emptiness. Liam turns his back, walks down the aisle, and pushes through the exit doors without a backward glance. Chloe watches her husband entirely abandon her forever. Her screams turn into breathless, desperate gasps as the heavy metal doors of the holding cell slam shut behind her. The flawless suburban princess is officially stripped of her title, her wealth, and her freedom. She is now left entirely alone to face the brutal, cold reality of a concrete cell. The echo of the heavy metal doors closing on Chloe is still fresh in my mind as I step into a different federal courtroom 3 weeks later. This time, the defendant sitting at the scarred wooden defense table is my former husband. Marcus is facing federal wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny charges. He is no longer wearing his custom Italian silk suits or flashing his expensive diamond watch. His overworked public defender explicitly instructed him to wear a cheap, ill-fitting gray blazer to make him appear humble and financially broken to the jury. It does not work. He is still exuding that same repulsive arrogance, leaning back in his chair and flashing a highly practiced smile at the jury box. He genuinely believes his natural charisma and handsome features will magically persuade 12 strangers that he is an innocent, misunderstood tech visionary who made a tiny administrative error. The federal prosecutor, a sharp woman who has never lost a white-collar crime case, stands up and adjusts her microphone. The prosecution calls Vanessa to the stand, she announces. The smirk completely falls off Marcus' face. He whips his head around to look at the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom. Vanessa walks down the center aisle. She looks entirely different from the glamorous marketing director who used to parade around my living room clutching a stolen Hermes bag. She is wearing a conservative navy pantsuit, her blonde hair pulled back sharply into a tight bun. She looks absolutely terrified. Facing a mandatory 10-year minimum sentence in federal prison for her role as his willing accomplice, Vanessa did exactly what any cornered opportunist would do. She cut a highly aggressive plea deal. She turned state's witness to save her own skin, and now she is about to feed Marcus directly to the wolves. Vanessa takes the oath, her hand shaking visibly as she swears to tell the whole truth. The prosecutor does not waste a single second on pleasantries. She immediately projects a massive digital spreadsheet onto the courtroom monitors. Vanessa guides the jury through every single illegal transaction with ruthless chronological precision. She details how Marcus deliberately set up phantom vendor accounts to siphon money from the company payroll. She explains how he forged board member signatures to bypass the internal security protocols. She points directly at Marcus and tearfully admits that he explicitly ordered her to falsify the quarterly marketing budgets so he could quietly purchase her luxury vehicles and diamond jewelry. Marcus aggressively shakes his head, whispering frantically to his public defender, but the lawyer simply stares straight ahead, knowing the battle is completely unwinnable. The prosecutor then moves to the most damaging piece of evidence: the hidden hard drive Vanessa handed over to me at that desolate roadside diner. The prosecutor projects a series of private encrypted text messages onto the glowing screens. These are not just financial documents. They are raw, unfiltered conversations between Marcus and Vanessa. Please read the highlighted message sent on October 12th, the prosecutor instructs. Vanessa leans into the microphone, her voice echoing clearly through the hushed courtroom. Marcus wrote that his angel investors were gullible, pathetic cash cows who did not possess the intellectual capacity to understand his brilliant algorithm. She reads another text, where Marcus viciously mocked his own dedicated software engineers, calling them expendable peasants who should be grateful he even allowed them to breathe the same corporate air. The jury visibly recoils. The final text message is the absolute killing blow. Vanessa reads a message Marcus sent the very night he was arrested. He bragged about draining his elderly parents' entire retirement savings to secure his federal bail, calling them desperate fools who would happily bankrupt themselves to protect his golden boy image. A collective gasp ripples through the gallery. Even the judge looks down at Marcus with an expression of pure, unfiltered disgust. Marcus slumps down in his wooden chair, the color entirely draining from his face. He looks at the 12 jurors sitting in the box. There is no sympathy in their eyes. There is only cold, hard condemnation. He finally realizes the terrifying truth. His charm, his looks, and his arrogant silver tongue cannot save him. He cannot manipulate a room full of people who are currently reading his most vile narcissistic thoughts in bold black and white text. The defense rests their case without calling a single witness because there is absolutely nothing left to say. The judge issues the final instructions, and the jury files out of the room to deliberate. They do not even ask for a hot lunch. They return to the courtroom in less than 45 minutes. It is a record-breaking deliberation time for a complex federal wire fraud case. The jury foreman stands up holding a single sheet of paper. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts," he announces, his voice carrying absolute and undeniable finality across the entire room. Marcus lets out a strangled gasp, his hands gripping the edge of the table as the reality of a decade behind bars crashes down upon him. The judge revokes his bail immediately, citing his previous attempts to tamper with corporate evidence. Federal marshals step forward, pulling Marcus roughly to his feet and snapping heavy metal handcuffs around his wrists. The cold metallic click resonates through the silent courtroom, sealing his ultimate downfall. I sit perfectly still in the second row, watching the man who once called me useless being marched toward a concrete cell. He turns his head frantically, searching the gallery for any sign of support or pity, but he finds absolutely none. I offer him a single cold smile as the heavy wooden doors swing shut, completely erasing him from the privileged world he tried so ruthlessly to steal. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom shut with a resounding thud, finalizing the guilty verdict and locking Marcus away. 2 weeks pass in a blur of corporate restructuring and aggressive legal maneuvers. Today is the final chapter. It is the morning of his official sentencing hearing. A massive storm has descended upon the city, turning the sky a bruised purple and unleashing a torrential downpour across the concrete steps of the federal courthouse. I sit in the back of my armored Escalade, watching the relentless rain hammer against the tinted glass. My driver pulls up to the curb right in front of the towering stone pillars of the courthouse. My security detail steps out first, opening heavy black umbrellas to shield me from the freezing downpour. I step onto the wet pavement wearing a striking crimson trench coat over my tailored suit. I am completely untouchable, shielded from the storm and the chaos surrounding me. As I walk toward the wide granite steps, a miserable figure breaks away from the small crowd gathered near the side entrance. It is Marcus. He is currently out on a highly restricted pre-sentencing tether, wearing a cheap gray raincoat that is entirely soaked through. He looks absolutely horrendous. His face is gaunt, his eyes are sunken into dark purple shadows, and he is shivering violently in the freezing wind. The arrogant, untouchable CEO who used to parade his mistress through my living room has been reduced to a pathetic, trembling shell of a man. "Zara, please wait!" Marcus shouts, his voice barely audible over the roaring rain and the distant thunder. My lead security guard instantly steps forward, placing a massive hand against Marcus' chest to physically block his advance. Marcus stumbles backward, nearly slipping on the wet concrete, but he does not retreat. He stands there with rain pouring down his hollow face, looking at me with pure, naked desperation. "Let him speak," I command, my voice calm and perfectly steady. The security guard drops his arm, but remains rigidly in place, ready to neutralize Marcus if he makes a single aggressive move. I step closer to the edge of the umbrella remaining perfectly dry, while the storm aggressively punishes my ex-husband. "What do you want, Marcus?" I ask, looking down at him. "You have exactly 2 minutes before I walk into that building and watch the federal judge hand you a 10-year prison sentence." Marcus falls to his knees right there on the soaking wet pavement. He does not care who is watching. He does not care about his pride or his reputation because he has absolutely nothing left to lose. He reaches out with trembling wet hands, desperately trying to grab the edge of my coat or hold my hand. I pull my hand back instantly, taking a calculated step away from him. "Zara, I am begging you," Marcus cries, tears streaming down his face and mixing with the freezing rain. "Please, you have to speak to the judge for me. You are the victim in the civil case. If you submit a formal victim impact statement asking for extreme leniency, the judge will listen to you. They will reduce my sentence. I cannot survive 10 years in a federal prison. I will not make it." I stare down at him, feeling absolutely no pity. "You should have considered your survival skills before you embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy diamonds for your mistress," I state coldly. "You should have thought about your future before you forged investor signatures and treated your employees like disposable garbage." "I was under too much pressure," Marcus sobs, wiping his wet face with his shaking hands. "The pressure of being a CEO just broke me. The investors were demanding impossible returns, and I panicked. I made terrible mistakes, but I am not an evil man. I always loved you, Zara. I swear to God I always loved you. We built a life together. You cannot just throw me away to rot in a cell." His pathetic attempt to weaponize the word love makes my blood run completely cold. My expression turns into absolute ice as I look at the miserable man kneeling at my feet. "You never loved me, Marcus," I say, my voice slicing through the heavy rain like a razor. "You did not love me when I stayed up until 3 in the morning, balancing your household budget, because you claimed your brilliant mind was too important for basic math. You did not love me when you brought Vanessa into our home and laughed in my face. You loved how my silence made you feel tall. You loved having a quiet, obedient wife you could financially abuse and constantly belittle to inflate your own fragile ego." Marcus shakes his head wildly, completely unable to accept the harsh, undeniable truth. "I was wrong," he weeps, grasping at the empty air between us. "I was so arrogant, but I can change. I can be the man you deserve. Just give me one more chance to prove it." I look down at him, and I feel a profound, soaring sense of absolute liberation. The heavy chains of his emotional abuse are permanently severed. "Calling my mother to pick up her useless daughter was the greatest gift you ever gave me," I tell him, leaning in slightly so he can hear every single word over the crashing storm. "You thought you were throwing out the trash. Instead, you woke the dragon I was hiding to keep you warm. I dimmed my own light for 5 years so you could shine, and you rewarded my sacrifice with ultimate betrayal. You do not get my mercy today, Marcus. You get exactly what you earned." I turn my back on him without a single ounce of hesitation. My security detail instantly forms a protective wall behind me, entirely blocking Marcus from my view. "Zara, please do not leave me here." Marcus screams, his voice cracking in sheer terror as he realizes his fate is entirely sealed. "Zara, I am begging you." I do not look back. I do not slow my pace. I walk straight toward my waiting armored SUV, my crimson coat striking against the gray, stormy backdrop. The heavy reinforced door opens smoothly. I step inside the warm, luxurious interior, leaving him sobbing uncontrollably in the freezing rain. The heavy reinforced door of my armored SUV slams shut, instantly cutting off the miserable sound of Marcus sobbing in the freezing rain. The plush, quiet interior wraps around me as my driver pulls away from the federal courthouse, leaving my former life completely behind in the rearview mirror. 6 months pass since that stormy afternoon. 6 months is a relatively short amount of time in the corporate financial world, but it is an absolute eternity when you are paying for your crimes behind concrete walls. The justice system works with terrifying efficiency when presented with undeniable forensic evidence. Today, Marcus is not wearing a custom Italian silk suit or sitting in a frosted glass boardroom pitching phantom algorithms to gullible investors. He is wearing a highly visible, scratchy orange jumpsuit. He is standing in the center of a loud, sterile federal prison cafeteria, holding a cheap plastic mop. The man who once bragged that his unique genius was the only thing keeping an entire company afloat is now tasked with scrubbing spilled milk and mystery meat off the sticky linoleum floor. The absolute best part of his new reality is the financial structure of his prison employment. For his back-breaking cafeteria labor, Marcus earns approximately 12 cents an hour. But he does not get to keep a single penny of it. Due to the aggressive civil judgment my legal team secured, every solitary cent he earns is automatically garnished and routed directly into a corporate restitution account. He works all day, every day, just to pay me back a fraction of the $15 million he owes. His massive, fragile ego is entirely crushed under the weight of a 10-year sentence and permanent monumental debt. 2 states away, in a federal women's correctional facility, his former sister-in-law is experiencing her own brutal reality check. Chloe no longer has access to pristine suburban living rooms, beige cashmere cardigans, or ring lights to broadcast her fake white tears. She is permanently stationed in the prison laundry facility. The woman who once loudly demanded the maitre d' kick me out of a Michelin-starred restaurant for ruining the ambiance is now up to her elbows in harsh industrial bleach. She spends her days aggressively scrubbing mysterious stains out of heavy canvas prison uniforms. Her delicate manicured hands are ruined, blistered, and cracked from the cheap soap and boiling water. She has absolutely no one to complain to. Liam completely vanished from her life the second the annulment paperwork cleared. Her wealthy suburban friends blocked her number the moment the charity fraud went public. She tried to manipulate the other inmates by playing the victim, but federal prisoners do not care about internet drama. She is totally isolated, serving 5 hard years, without the possibility of early parole, paying the ultimate price for stealing from dying children to fund her extortion payments. The absolute ruin of the family extends far beyond the prison walls. Eleanor and Thomas, the proud, arrogant parents who once looked at me bleeding in a hospital bed and called me a mixed-class burden, are currently experiencing the exact poverty they always mocked. Having drained their entire life savings and completely liquidated their assets to pay for Marcus' failed legal defense, they were aggressively evicted from their luxury suburban estate. Today they live in a cramped, rusted, single-wide trailer parked on a desolate dirt lot on the extreme outskirts of Atlanta. There are no country club brunches or high society galas. The thin aluminum walls of their trailer offer zero protection from the sweltering, humid Georgia heat. Eleanor spends her days staring blankly out of a dirty window, mourning the complete destruction of her pristine social status, while Thomas works a minimum wage job as a night shift security guard at a local warehouse. They are entirely forgotten by the elite society they worshipped, trapped in a miserable reality of their own making. I do not think about them at all. I am standing on the sprawling penthouse balcony of the Sterling Venture Capital headquarters, breathing in the crisp, clean air high above the bustling Atlanta streets. The afternoon sun reflects brilliantly off the surrounding glass skyscrapers. I am wearing a sharp, tailored emerald green suit, my posture perfectly straight and completely unburdened. The heavy shadows I hid in for 5 years are entirely gone. I have stepped fully into the light, not just as an heir, but as the fiercely public co-chief executive officer of my family empire. The door to the balcony slides open, and my mother Vivian steps out to join me. She hands me a crystal glass of sparkling water. The deep fractures in our relationship caused by my foolish desire to protect an insecure man have been completely healed. We stand side by side, 2 generations of powerful Black women running a multi-billion-dollar global empire with absolute ruthless precision. We do not just make money anymore. We use our massive capital to actively reshape the landscape. This morning, I officially launched the Sterling Empowerment Initiative. It is a dedicated $50 million global foundation designed specifically to help vulnerable women escape severe financial abuse in toxic marriages. The foundation provides immediate elite legal representation, emergency housing, and aggressive financial auditing services to women whose husbands try to trap them using money as a weapon. I am utilizing the exact same forensic accounting teams and corporate lawyers who dismantled Marcus to systematically hunt down abusive men hiding marital assets. We are actively leveling the playing field, ensuring that no woman ever has to stay in a dangerous or demeaning marriage simply because she cannot afford a brutal legal fight. It is the ultimate evolution of my pain transformed into an unstoppable weapon for justice. The sun begins to set, casting a brilliant golden glow across the city skyline. Tonight is the inaugural charity gala for the new foundation, and the entire financial district is waiting for my arrival. My lead executive assistant steps out onto the balcony, holding a sleek tablet. "Ms. Sterling," she says, her voice professional and crisp. "Your evening schedule is ready, and the gala coordinators are expecting you in 30 minutes. Is the car ready?" I turn away from the stunning view, walking slowly to the thick glass edge of the balcony. I look straight down at the private corporate plaza 50 stories below. Parked in a perfectly synchronized line, waiting with their engines quietly purring, is my personal security detail. I smile, feeling a deep, soaring sense of total absolute victory. "Send all 6 SUVs," I command, my voice ringing with undeniable power. "Let them know exactly who is arriving." The ultimate lesson from Zara's journey is that dimming your own light to protect an insecure partner's fragile ego will never bring you genuine love or loyalty. It only breeds resentment and invites betrayal. For years, Zara hid her immense power, wealth, and brilliance, accepting disrespect from Marcus and his entitled, prejudiced family just to keep the peace. However, she learned the hard way that toxic people do not appreciate your sacrifices, they exploit them. True strength comes from stepping fully into your authentic self and refusing to shrink to make others comfortable. Zara's triumphant reclamation of her empire teaches us that boundaries must be ruthless when dealing with manipulation. Financial independence, self-respect, and the courage to walk away from abusers are your ultimate shields. You cannot negotiate with narcissists, but you can completely outsmart them by knowing your undeniable worth. Sometimes, the most painful betrayals are exactly the catalyst we need to wake the sleeping dragon within us and reclaim our rightful thrones. Have you ever had to stop shrinking yourself for the sake of a toxic partner or family member? Share your story of reclamation in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe.